Good day everyone, I am Lara Nicole Ardurajas and together with my group mates, we will discuss Module 8, Communication and Decision Making. Communication and decision making are basic prerequisites to create effective organizational strategies and efficient human resource management. These are essential factors that organization must continuously promote and improve. In this chapter, we will first discuss the definition, function, and background of communication and organization. This is followed by various types of communication and the different barriers that hinders effective communication. After understanding these informations, we must also acknowledge the ethics in communication for us to have a successful way of transferring message. The remaining parts of this chapter are intended to discuss the important concepts of decision making, its models and biases, and how groups perform this process. Now, let's start with the definition of communication. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, communication is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. So, what are the functions of communication? In an organization, communication serves for purposes, namely control, wherein in an organization there are rules and processes that employee must follow, communicated to workers to keep order and equity operating within the system. Number 2, the motivation. Goals, feedback, and reinforcement are among those items communicated to employees to improve performance and stimulate motivation. Number 3, information. Organizations need to keep their employees informed of their goals, industry information, preferred process, and development and technology in order that they can do their job correctly and efficiently. Number 4, emotional expression. Communication is the means by which employees express themselves and interact socially. Now that you know the definition and function of communication, let's move on to the pillars of communication. There are 7 pillars or principles of business communication. So if someone opens his mouth, writes on a paper, or makes the camera rolling, he or she should strive to create a message that satisfies these pillars. Why? Simply because the primary reason for communication is not just to talk, but to be understood. When your team member understands you, they give better results. When your customer understands you, they purchase and promote your products and their service. When your manager understands you, he or she supports you in your career. When organizations communicate well and employees understand their roles and how they fit into their organization's mission, they succeed. Communication is happening between individuals when all parties are engaged in uncovering and understanding the meaning behind the words. It's not something that one person does alone. When business professionals make their contribution to the uncovering and understanding process, they should strive to be, first, clear. Messages should be easily understood. To make sure you convey your message clearly, you must communicate just one message at a time. Express the message in a clear language. Don't try to sugarcoat tough messages. Number 2, concise. Messages should feature only necessary information. A message should be specific for us to deliver it with no confusion. And then number 3, objective. Messages should be impartial. Every message we convey shouldn't be biased, prejudiced, or preferring benefit to one person over another. It should treat and affect all equally. Number 4, consistent. Messages when communicated more than once should always be the same. Number 5, complete. Messages should feature all the necessary information. And number 6, relevant. Messages should have meaning to its receiver. And number 7, understanding of audience knowledge. Messages should consider the receiver already knows about the situation and not assume too much or too little. So that's all for my sharing. Hope you understand something from what I've said. The rest will be presented by my group mates, and always remember that the art of communication is the language of leadership.
Good morning, everyone. I am Princess Danyo, and I will be discussing the communication process. The majority of people communicate many times in a given day. This is especially apparent in the workplace. In order to effectively communicate with others, it is important to understand how the communication process works. What is the communication process? The communication process refers to a series of actions or steps taken in order to successfully communicate or share information with each other. It involves several components such as the sender of the communication, the actual message being sent, the encoding of the message, the receiver, and the decoding of the message. There are also various channels of communication to consider within the communication process. This refers to the way a message is sent. This can be through various mediums such as voice, audio, video, writing email, fax, or body language. The overall goal of the communication process is to present an individual or party with information and have them understand it. The sender must choose the most appropriate medium in order for the communication process to have worked successfully. Parts of the communication process. The communication process has several components that enable the transmission of a message. Here are the various parts. Sender. This is the person that is delivering a message to a recipient. Message. This refers to the information that the sender is relaying to the receiver. Channel of communication. This is the transmission or method of delivering the message. Decoding. This is the interpretation of the message. Decoding is performed by the receiver. Receiver. The receiver is the person who is getting or receiving the message. Feedback. In some instances, the receiver might have feedback or a response for the sender. This starts an interaction. How does the communication process work? In order to successfully communicate, it is important to understand how the process works. Here are the 7 steps in the communication process. Step 1. The sender develops an idea to be sent. Step 2. The sender encodes the message. Step 3. The sender selects the channel of communication that will be used. Step 4. The message travels over the channel of communication. Step 5. The message is received by the receiver. Step 6. The receiver decodes the message. Step 7. The receiver provides feedback if applicable. Let us discuss the step-by-step communication process. Step 1. The sender develops an idea to be sent. The beginning of the communication process involves the sender creating an idea that they plan to send to another person or group of people. Essentially, they are planning the overall subject matter or information they want to transmit. Step 2. The sender encodes the message. This means that they transform the thoughts of the information they want to send into a certain format. For example, if you are writing a letter, you will translate your idea into words. The message can also be nonverbal, oral, or symbolic. Step 3. The sender selects the channel of communication that will be used. This involves selecting the most suitable medium for the message they are relaying. Some communication mediums include speaking, writing, electronic, transmission, or nonverbal communication. If you are communicating at work, make sure to select the proper and the most professional channel of communication. Step 4. The message travels over the channel of communication. After the medium is chosen, the message then begins the process of transmission. The exact process of this will depend on the selected medium. In order for the message to be properly sent, the sender should have selected the appropriate medium. Step 5. The message is received by the receiver. This step in the communication process is done by hearing the message, seeing it, feeling it, or another form of reception. Step 6. The receiver decodes the message. In other words, they interpret it and convert it into a thought. After they've done this, they analyze the message and attempt to understand it. The communication process is performed effectively when the sender and receiver have the same meaning for the transmitted message. However, there are times when the encoded messages may be misinterpreted once decoded. The reason behind such may be from the interrupting sounds from the surroundings of the sender and the receiver. These sounds are called noise. After some time, the receiver may start to clarify with the sender how he or she decoded the message. The receiver may ask the sender, "Do you mean it like this?" or "Do I understand you correctly?" This leads to the last process, which is the feedback. Step 7. The receiver provides feedback if applicable. Lastly, unless it's a one-way communication, the receiver will provide feedback in form of a reply to the original sender of the message. Feedback provides the recipient with the ability to ensure the sender that their message was properly received and interpreted. Between two people, this is two-way communication. The process of transferring and understanding the messages between sender and receiver is called the communication feedback loop. In our organization, the communication feedback loop occurs through various communication channels. These channels like newsletter, video conferencing, etc. are the medium used to transfer messages among the organization's employees, and they are classified into two: the formal and informal channels of communication. Formal channels of communication in our organization are established to relay messages that are related to employees' work activities. This may follow the organization's hierarchy of authority or chain of command, and would often refer to announcements from the Human Resources Department, leadership messages, employee recognition, and so forth. On the other hand, the informal channels of communication in an organization involves personal and social messages. Often, employees see this as gossips, but this may still assist the organization with change management if used properly. For instance, if there is a new process in the testing phase, the group of employees experiencing it firsthand may express their excitement to others, thus eliminating any fear of change and promoting enthusiasm in adapting to the new process. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Antoinette Antonio. Communication means transferring thoughts, information, emotion, and ideas through gesture, voice, symbols, signs, and expressions from one person to another. Three things are most important and essential in any communication process. They are the sender, receiver, and the channel, or the medium. There are two basic types of communication: the verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication. Verbal communication is the type of communication which involves the use of sounds and words. It can be delivered either through oral or written means by the sender. Oral communication. A communication which happens through word of mouth. Spoken words, conversations, and also any messages or information are shared or exchanged between one another through speech or word of mouth is called oral communication. Often, oral communication is the most effective way of communicating with others. Its primary advantage is the speed of exchange of information and feedback from sender to receiver and vice versa. But a major disadvantage of it is the possible distortion of message. Another is the language barrier between the sender and the receiver. The example of these are public speech, news reading, television, radio, telephone, and mobile conversations. Written communication. A communication happens through any word or written or often written sign which refers the languages uses in any medium is called written communication. This form includes memos, emails, text messages, and anything that is done through writing or typing. Written communication does not only involve written words but also drawn symbols. Unlike oral communication, these are verifiable or tangible forms that receiver can use as a reference at a later date. However, it is time-consuming and most have a lack of feedback. The example of this are simply any handwritten, type, newspaper, printed Word documents, letters, books, and magazines. There is a verbal communication in workplace. Verbal communication is facilitated by the use of voice and words. Generally, the key elements of verbal communication include words, sounds, languages, and the physical act of speaking. The majority of verbal communication accounts for casual exchanges with other people. In verbal communication, there is a clear and personal communication link between senders and receivers. Challenges associated with verbal communication includes a poor choice of wording, physical disabilities, ineffective utilization of communication techniques, and subjective opinions. The importance of verbal communication in the workplace. Correcting wrong. Just guess there was a file to be saved and you made a small error. By saying, "I am sorry for the error," will save you. It's the power of word sorry that is effective as a part of a verbal communication. Persuade someone. You need to persuade your coworker to join up a project. Then tricks of a persuasion come to help. Here your verbal communication skill is there to pull him or her on board. Create a relationship. You are new to a workplace and by speaking to counterpart, you create a new relationship. Only by making efforts to converse with others do you make new relationships which cannot be done without verbal communication. Bringing clarity. There is a small issue that is to be made understood by the other members, and here you can make them understand by using proper syntaxes and semantics. Even writing with proper words will help you to make the reader understood, especially in emails, memorandums, and etc. Increases productivity. Without proper communication or getting the message through with the team members, it would be impossible to get the maximum output. The team that works with good lateral communication and group discussion brings out better results. Increase job satisfaction. Empowerment of employees through upward and downward communications is a sign of increased job satisfaction. Through the flow of information upwards in the form of feedback, and if the bosses are responding by listening to them, means employees are empowered. Sharing of ideas. Communicating within the team or within a company or needs two-way flow of ideas. If there is a platform to share ideas, then it is sure to bring more success to the company. Removes barriers. Effective communications help to remove the hurdles that are between the management and the employees working. Words properly toned and deciphered to the employees will serve as a tool to bridge the gap. Clear and transparent communication is the key to success. Gives motivation. Words of support and appreciation provided by the management at the right time boost the confidence level of the employees and in turn helps in productivity. As motivation has a direct impact on the productivity, verbal communications play a crucial role in providing feedback and recognizing individuals in the form of emails, memorandums, announcements, newsletters, and etc. There is so-called a gendered talk, differences in the ways men and women tend to communicate. Women. They talk to build rapport in relationship. The style of talk tends to be more expressive or the rich with words intended to deepen understanding and meaning. Communication style to be more tentative. Tend to use talk to create and maintain a relationship. Men. They talk to make reports to others. Their style of talk tends to be more instrumental or clip responses intended to provide direction. Tends to reflect more certainty. Tend to use talk to gain control over situations and other. So a verbal communication is the use of words to share information with other people. It can therefore include both spoken and written communication. However, many people use the term to describe only spoken communication. The verbal element of communication is all about the words that you choose and how they are heard and interpreted. It is also any communication that uses words to share information with others. This is words that may be spoken or written. It is a two-way process. It is about passing information from one person to another. This means that both the sending and the receiving of the message are equally important. There are a large number of different verbal communication skills. They range from the obvious, or being able to speak clearly or listening, for example, to the more subtle, such as reflecting and clarifying. This provides a summary of these skills and shows where you can find out more. So it is important to remember that effective verbal communication cannot be fully isolated from nonverbal communication. Your body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions, for example. Clarity of speech. Remaining calm and focused. Being polite and following some basic rules of etiquette will aid the process of verbal communication. Opening communication. In many interpersonal encounters, the first few minutes are extremely important. First impressions have a significant impact on the success of further and future communication. When you first meet someone, you form an instant impression of them based on how they look, sound, and behave, as well as anything you may have heard about them from other people. This first impression guides your future communications, at least to some extent. For example, when you meet someone and hear them speak, you form a judgment about their background and likely level of ability and understanding. This might well change what you say. If you hear a foreign accent, for example, you might decide that you need to use a simpler language. You might also realize that you will need to listen more carefully to ensure that you understand what they are saying to you. Of course, your first impression may be revised later. You should ensure that you consciously update your thinking when you receive new information about your contact and as you get to know them better. Basic verbal communication skills. Effective speaking and listening. The effective speaking involves three main areas: the words you choose, how you say them, and how you reinforce them with other nonverbal communication. All this affect the transmission of your message and how it is received and understood by your audience. It is worth considering your choice of words carefully. You will probably need to use different words in different situations, even when discussing the same subject. For example, what you say to a close colleague will be different from how you present a subject at a major conference. How you speak includes your tone of voice and pace. Like nonverbal communication more generally, these send important messages to your audience. For example, about your level of interest and commitment, or whether you are nervous about their reaction. Active listening is an important skill. However, when we communicate, we tend to spend far more energy considering what we are going to say than listening to the other person. Effective listening is vital for good verbal communication. There are a number of ways that you can ensure that you listen more effectively. These include: be prepared to listen. Concentrate on the speaker and not on how you are going to reply. Keep an open mind and avoid making judgments about the speaker. Concentrate on the main direction of the speaker's message. Try to understand broadly what they are trying to say overall, as well as the detail of words that they are using. Avoid distractions if at all possible. For example, if there is a lot of background noise, you might suggest that you go somewhere else to talk. Be objective. Do not be trying to think of your next question while the other person is giving information. Do not dwell on one or two points at the expense of others. Try to use the overall picture and all the information that you have. Do not stereotype the speaker. Try not to let prejudices associated with, for example, gender, ethnicity, accent, social class, appearance, or dress interfere with what is being said. There are a number of tools and techniques that you can use to improve the effectiveness of your verbal communication. These include reinforcement, reflection, clarification, and questioning. Reinforcement. Reinforcement is the use of encouraging words alongside nonverbal gestures such as head nods, a warm facial expression, and maintaining eye contact. All this help to build a rapport and more likely to reinforce openness in others. The use of encouragement and positive reinforcement can encourage others to participate in discussion, particularly in group work. Show interest in what other people have to say. Pave the way for development or maintenance of a relationship. Ally first and give reassurance. Show warmth and openness, and reduce shyness or nervousness in ourselves and others. Questioning. Questioning is broadly how we obtain information from others on specific topics. Questioning is an essential way of clarifying areas that are unclear or test your understanding. It can also enable you to explicitly seek support from others. On a moral social level, questioning is also a useful technique to start conversations, draw someone into a conversation, or simply show interest. Effective questioning is therefore an essential element of a verbal communication. We use two main types of question. Closed questions. Closed questions tend to seek only a one or two word answer, often simply yes or no. They therefore limit the scope of the response. Two examples of closed questions are: did you travel by car today? And did you see the football game yesterday? These types of question allow the questioner to remain in control of the communication. This is often not the desired outcome when trying to encourage verbal communication. So, many people try to focus on using an open questions more often. Nevertheless, closed questions can be useful for focusing discussion and obtaining clear, concise answers when needed. Open questions. Open questions demand further discussion and elaboration. They therefore broaden the scope for response. They include, for example, what was the traffic like this morning? What do you feel you would like to gain from this discussion? Open questions will take longer to answer, but they give the other person far more scope for self-expression and encourage involvement in the conversation. Reflecting and clarifying. Reflecting is the process of feeding back to another person your understanding of what has been said. Reflecting is a specialized skill often used within counseling, but it can also be applied to a wide range of communication contexts and is a useful skill to learn. Reflecting often involves paraphrasing the message communicated to you by the speaker in your own words. You need to try to capture the essence of the facts and feelings expressed, and communicate your understanding back to the speaker. It is a useful skill because you can check that you have understood the message clearly. The speaker gets feedback about how the message has been received and can then clarify the expand if they wish. It shows interest in and respect for what the other person has to say. You are demonstrating that you are considering the other person's viewpoint. Summarizing. A summary is an overview of the main points or issues raised. Summarizing can also serve the same purpose as reflecting. However, summarizing allows both parties to review and agree the message and ensure that communication has been effective. When used effectively, summaries may also serve as a guide to the next steps forward. Closing. Closing communication. The way a communication is closed or ended will, at least in part, determine the way a conversation is remembered. People use both verbal and non-verbal signals to end a conversation. Verbal signals may include phrases such as, "Well, I must be going," and "Thank you so much. That's real helpful." Non-verbal conclusions may include starting to avoid eye contact, standing up, turning away, or behaviors such as looking at watch or closing notepads or books. These non-verbal actions indicate to other person that the initiator wishes to end the communication. People often use a mixture of this but tend to start with non-verbal signals, especially face-to-face. On the telephone, of course, verbal cues are essential. Closing an interaction to abruptly may not allow the other person to round off what he or she is saying, so you should ensure there is time for winding up. The closure of an interaction is a good time to make any future arrangements. Last, but not the least, is the time will not doubt be accompanied by a number of socially acceptable parting gestures. It is vital to remember that any communication is made up of some of its parts. Verbal communication is an important element but only part of the overall message conveyed. Some research suggests that the verbal element is in fact a very small part of the overall message, just 20 to 30%. This is still, however, significant and is worth spending time to review to improve your verbal communication skills. There are the advantages of verbal communication. Following are the advantages of verbal communication. It saves times in communication. It is quick in obtaining feedback once delivered. It provides complete understanding of a communication and delivered. There is a chance to make it more clear in case of doubts and interpretation of words or ideas. It is more reliable method of communication. It is flexible and effective for all. It is powerful means of persuasion and control. It is cheaper way of communication and hence saves money. Non-verbal communication. A non-verbal communication is the use of movements, facial expressions, personal appearances, eye contact, and all other non-words means to communicate. It is agreeable that non-verbal communication helps make a conversation more interesting. For instance, teachers tend to use various movements and gestures when explaining lessons in class to catch the attention of students. In an organization, some common non-verbal communication practices are the individual's general appearance, personal hygiene, and dress codes or uniforms. Any communication without word of mouth, Spoken words, conversation, and written languages are called nonverbal communication. It happens through signs, symbols, colors, gestures, body language, or any facial expressions are known as nonverbal communication. Traffic signals are one of the best examples for nonverbal communication. Many people use nonverbal communication throughout the day to express how they're feeling and what they're thinking. Understanding and communicating with others at work is one challenge, but interpreting nonverbal body language can present unique challenges when working remotely. Whether you are working in person or remotely, it is important to know how to communicate with colleagues, supervisors, and interviewers using gestures, tone of voice, or other nonverbal cues to make your message more effective. Nonverbal communication sends cues to others using actions rather than words. This can include communication using hand gestures, eye contact, body language, appearance, facial expressions, and tone of voice. Nonverbal communication can be one of the strongest forms of communication between co-workers. It can take place in many workplace situations, including during meetings, interviews, or casual conversations. Nonverbal communication is a way to express thoughts or emotions without words. People can express happiness, engagement, concern, gratitude, and confidence by responding nonverbally. Examples of nonverbal communication in the workplace: maintaining proper eye contact. Co-workers will often feel valued and appreciated if they know they are being heard. You can help them feel this way by making eye contact while they're speaking. For example, if a co-worker approaches you with an idea to increase the collaboration in your department, show that you are actively listening by maintaining an eye contact and nodding in agreement. Keeping your eyes on the person you're speaking with rather than on your computer, paperwork, or cell phone lets them know you're listening to their input. Maintaining eye contact while you're replying to them also keeps the conversation engaging. And turning your camera on for video chats can build a respectful relationship between co-workers. Using a positive tone of voice, though the act of speaking is a part of verbal communication, how you speak can be considered nonverbal communication. Whether you are communicating in person or participating in a video conference call, always be aware of your tone of voice so it reflects your intended message. Maintaining a positive tone while talking with a coworker or supervisor can affect the energy of your whole conversation. For example, if an employee is giving a presentation, proposing a new client engagement plan, an energetic and positive tone can spark enthusiasm for the project. This may increase the level of interest from senior management as they notice the employee express excitement and passion for the project. Being mindful of personal appearance, the way you present yourself can create an impact greater than words might you say. Your workplace appearance, such as looking neat and prepared, even if you are in the comfort of your own home office, or keeping a tidy workstation, can convey your self-confidence and make a positive impression on coworkers. For example, if you're hoping to speak with a supervisor to ask for a raise or promotion, you may choose to dress in business attire to showcase your dedication to both the position and professionalism in the workplace. Standing or sitting with a good posture, the way you stand or sit at work can often display your attitude or attentiveness towards certain situations. Sitting or standing up straight can show you're engaged in the conversation while also portraying a confident appearance during an interview. Or, if you're explaining a new idea to your supervisor and want to communicate effectively, you can sit or stand with your shoulders back to convey your confidence and why you believe your idea will benefit the company. Expressing kindness or professionalism through appropriate touch. Communicating through touch has evolved from the pre-COVID workplace. Even without social distancing protocols, people have always varied in their comfort levels with touch. Developing your cultural intelligence can be a useful rapport building skill in the workplace. For example, in the US, Shaking a person's hand firmly is a way to show respect or that you are pleased to meet them, whereas that might be misconstrued as a sign of aggression in other cultures. If you sense that it's appropriate, a slight touch on the arm or pat on the shoulder can also be a way to show your support or encouragement without vocally expressing it. Displaying courteous facial expressions. As people communicate with you, they will often be anticipating a nonverbal response by watching your facial expressions. Keep in mind, even during a virtual interview, your face can communicate what you're feeling or thinking without using any words. Smiling, nodding, along and using your eyebrows can indicate a positive reaction when having a conversation. For example, if a coworker is telling you about their recent vacation, you can smile and nod along while you listen to show you're enjoying their story. Respecting personal space. During one-on-one conversations, you may move closer to a person rather than remain far apart. For example, if you're sitting down before a meeting with a large group of people and notice of a coworker interested in talking, you can get up and sit near them. This shows that you are interested in having a conversation and want to hear them clearly. Try to make sure you're allowing enough space to maintain a comfortable environment for both of you. Using hand gestures to express a feeling, the gestures of positioning of your hands during conversations can convey to others how you're feeling. If you move your hands to build expression throughout stories, people can become more engaged in what you're saying. Hand gestures can also express friendliness or appreciation, like waving to someone from across the room to greet them or giving them a thumbs up to express a job well done after a presentation. Paying attention to a body language. Your overall body language can showcase your feelings during a meeting or while carrying on a conversation. Keeping your arms relaxed at your sides while talking expresses openness and the willingness to listen. Whereas, crossing your arms in front of you might indicate to others that you are closed off. You can also express politeness and undistracted attention by leaning forward in your seat. Your body language can also demonstrate how engaged you are throughout a conversation. For example, if you're watching a coworker give a presentation and they're sitting upright with your arms on the table, this can show you're engaged in their presentation. Slouching in your seat might imply that you are disinterested.
The third and last type of communication is interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication is the exchange of information between two or more individuals or groups. According to F. Lutens, 2010, in interpersonal communication, the major emphasis is on transferring information from one person to another. Interpersonal communication may be done through various verbal or nonverbal ways as explained earlier. Communication is a basic method observed for having an effect on behavioral change in employees in an organization. It combines the psychological processes like perception, motivation, and learning and language. But the organization must also acknowledge that the advancements in information technology also have an impact on the human interaction process. Nonetheless, interpersonal communication can only be effective when the recipient has properly decoded and firmly believes the message from the sender. Interpersonal communication in the workplace plays an important role in employee satisfaction, motivation, collaboration, and business success. Interpersonal communication is the process of exchange of information, ideas, and feelings between two or more people through verbal or nonverbal methods. It often includes face-to-face exchange of information in a form of voice, facial expressions, body language, and gestures. The level of one's interpersonal communication skills is measured through the effectiveness of transferring messages to others. Commonly used interpersonal communication within an organization include daily internal employee communication, client meetings, employee performance reviews, and project discussions. In addition, online conversations today make a large portion of employees' interpersonal communication in the workplace. Importance of interpersonal communication. It is necessary to possess verbal skills in order to work effectively with your colleagues and bosses. Therefore, interpersonal skills are crucial to business success. Examples of interpersonal communication. Number 1, phone calls. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell, one of the inventors of the telephone, uttered the first word ever transmitted over the line. They worked to his assistant and are as historic as they are mundane. Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you. Since then, trillions of words have been spoken into phones daily. How many calls have you made today? 2. Meetings. Whether they're conducted in person, as in the pre-pandemic days, or on Zoom, meetings have long been a mainstay of the business experience. That said, like the modern saying, this could have been an email. Think twice before requesting someone's time and attention in a group setting. Number 3, presentations. The over-reliance on ye old slide deck may be fading out, but presentations remain a mainstay of the corporate conference room. And why not? A well-communicated presentation can be a rallying point for a project and galvanize the team together. 4. Emails and texting. Some pundits like to bemoan the fact that, as a culture, we spend too much time interacting with screens rather than each other. The fact is, we're using this screen to interact with each other, usually through written communication. The next topic to be discussed is the importance of feedback. Importance of feedback. Feedback is an important part of the communication process. In an interpersonal communication, unless feedback is given from one party to the other, it will be difficult to assess if the message decoded the way it was intended. Simply, interpersonal communication is highly dependent on feedback because it makes communication a two-way process. In the organizational context, feedback is seen to help improve employees' productivity and managers' effectiveness. Since there is a proper exchange of information from two individuals, there are less misunderstandings and more flow of ideas present in the employee-employer relationship. This also further results in better organizational performance. Feedback is your audience's response. It enables you to evaluate the effectiveness of your message. Feedback is essential in communication so as to know whether the recipient has understood the message in the same terms as intended by the sender and whether he agrees to that message or not. There are a lot of ways in which company takes feedback from their employees, such as employee surveys, memos, emails, open door policies, company newsletter, etc. Employees are not always willing to provide feedback. The organization has to work a lot to get the accurate feedback. The managers encourage feedback by asking specific questions, allowing their employees to express general views, etc. The organization should be receptive to their employees' feedback. Giving feedback effectively. First, check your motives. Before giving feedback, remind yourself when you are doing it. The purpose of giving feedback is to improve the situation or the person's performance. You won't accomplish that by being harsh, critical, or offensive. Be timely. The closer to the event you address the issue, the better. Feedback isn't about surprising someone. So the sooner you do it, the more the person will be expecting it. Think of it this way. It's much easier to provide feedback about a single one-hour job that hasn't been done properly than is to do so about a whole year of failed one-hour job. Make it regular. Feedback is a process that requires constant attention. When something needs to be said, say it. People then know where they stand all the time, and there will be few surprises. Also, problems don't get out of hand. It's not a once a year or once every 3 month event. Though this may be timing of formal feedback, informal, simple feedback should be given much more often than this. Perhaps every week or even every day, depending on the situation. Prepare your comments. You don't want to read a script, but you do need to be clear about what you are going to say. This will help you to stay on track and stick to the issues. Be specific. Tell the person exactly what he needs to improve. This ensures that you stick to facts and there is less room for ambiguity. Criticize in private. While public recognition is appreciated, public scrutiny is not. Establish a safe place to talk where you won't be interrupted or overheard. Use I statements. Give feedback from your perspective. This way, you avoid labeling the person. Say, I was angry and hurt when you criticized my report in front of my boss, rather than, you were insensitive yesterday. Limit your focus. A feedback session should discuss no more than 2 issues. Any more than that, and you risk the person feeling attacked and demoralized. You should also stick to behaviors he can actually change or influence. Talk about positives too. A good rule is to start off with something positive. This helps put the person at ease. It will also allow her to see what success looks like and what steps she needs to take next time to get it right. Provide specific suggestions. Make sure you both know what needs to be done to improve the situation. The main message should be that you care and want to help the person grow and develop. Set goals and make plans to monitor and evaluate his progress. Use the SMART acronym and define specific steps and milestones. Or the GROW model to motivate him to deliver the change that we want. Follow up. The whole purpose of feedback is to improve performance. You need to measure whether or not that is happening and then make adjustments as you go. Be sure to document your conversations and discuss what is working and what needs to be modified. Effective feedback helps individuals to understand what they did well and what they could do better. Once they know what is good and what isn't, they are able to adapt their behavior and work to improve it. Thus, feedback is a key tool for improving both individual and team performance. Feedback can be used for a variety of management purposes, including to influence someone to do something differently or to change their approach, Show people that you appreciate what they did and give them recognition, which helps to motivate them. Get information from your manager, team, or others regarding your own performance and behavior. Improve the quality of an individual's work or the work of teams. Show people that you value them and their input. Help people back onto the right target when they have misunderstood a goal or task. Build and maintain relationships with an open and honest dialogue, fostering trust and support. Set and explain expectations regarding behavior and performance, enabling people to meet and exceed their objectives. Feedback helps us understand things like what we can change to get better results, the rate of progress towards a goal, what needs to happen to improve relationships, whether something is worth doing, how well we are doing, what others think of us or how they value us, our level of performance against a target.
Good day, I am Jasmine Genevieve Malabanan de Jesus, and now we will discuss about the barriers to effective communication. It is already discussed to us that in order for a communication to be effective, it must be interpreted with its intended purpose. A good communication is not just a process of transferring information from one entity to another. It's an art of first listening or reading the information, comprehending it, processing it, and then transferring it. However, there are still some unexpected barriers that disrupt the transfer of messages. First is semantics. These are the varying gist that people attach to words. People have different ways of interpreting the semantic of others. The semantic barrier in communication can be defined as the misunderstanding and interpretation of meaning which can affect the communication. For example, when a CEO announces that only essential workers are required to come to work, those who were informed that they will be working from their respective homes may think that they are part of the non-essential workforce. Thus, they may also misinterpret that their jobs are not important. There are misunderstandings between the sender and the receiver. In order to overcome this, the sender needs to clarify ideas before sending it. In order to achieve effective communication, both sender and receiver should understand the attitude, communication skills, knowledge, social system, and culture of their corresponding communicator. The second is filtering of negative information. This involves the altering of information to make it more appealing or pleasing to the receiver. Usually, this is done by the subordinates to please their supervisors, even if they need to send negative news or results. Filtering does not let people have a complete information that they need to make important decisions. People do not get a complete picture of the situation, which affects their ability to make critical decisions. Many times, people manipulate information to make it appear more favorable even if it affects decision making. For example, the sales have been poor. The sales manager keeps the figures from the vice president in order to avoid making him angry, and this will affect how they will resort to the decision they will make. In order to overcome this, the sender needs to motivate the receiver that despite the bad news, there are various solutions that may be taken. Third is lack of credibility of the sender. Often, the clarity of a message is dependent on the credibility of the sender. If the sender is trustworthy and credible, his message is easily conveyed. But if the sender lacks credibility, his message may be ignored most of the time. If the receiver doesn't trust the sender, he will view the message itself with suspicion. If the sender is trustworthy, the receiver will likely believe the message despite her personal opinions about that subject. In other words, the trustworthiness of a communication, regardless of a format, is heavily influenced by the perceived credibility of the source of that communication. A lack of credibility can hinder effective communication and cause misunderstanding between the sender and the receiver. In order to overcome this, the sender needs to communicate feelings behind facts and do not be afraid to repeat the message and ask for their feedback. The fourth is information or communication overload. This happens when people are so overloaded with information from various sources that they begin to question the relevance of each information. It is the excess of information available to a person aiming to complete a task or make a decision. This further results in stress and misinterpretation. When people are overloaded with information, they are more prone to make mistakes. In order to overcome information or communication overload, is to choose only a few reliable sources and stick to their messages or information. It is also advisable to engage in meta-communication to know if the parties involved can accommodate each other or should do so in a different time. The last one is poor communication skills. This involves mispronunciation of words, lack of attentiveness, strong dependence on standards expression, and all other ways or skills that limits the ability to send or receive information. Good communication is essential in all areas of life, especially in the workplace. Poor communication can create misunderstanding, missed opportunities, conflict, the dissemination of misinformation, and mistrust, and employees might just feel overall defeated. In order to overcome poor communication skills, it is never too late to study and improve one's communication skills. Be open to constructive criticism. Again, the barriers to effective communications are: first, semantic; second, filtering of negative information; lack of credibility of the sender; information or communication overload; poor communication skills. That's all. Thank you.
Alam mo ba, ang baba ng profit ng company natin ngayong year? Wait, talaga? Oo, tinan mo. Meron din akong litratong mga new strategies natin ngayon gagamitin dito sa atin. Bawal daw yan, di ba? Baka maulit tayo na. Yan. Confidential daw yun eh. Di ba? Tingnan mo, ang ganda. This shows an ethical issue that might result to lose your job, being sentenced to prison, and having a bad impact on your working place and the company's high competencies. Honor and safeguard the confidentiality of your customers and partners that may have disclosed certain details that are meant to strictly be kept, even if there is no legally binding document such as a non-disclosure agreement. The same applies to those working in journalism and who may have tapped on sources that have requested to remain anonymous or share private knowledge of the record. Hi, I am Risa E. Rodriguez, and I'm going to discuss the ethics in communication. What does ethics do in communication? Ethical communication refers to communicating in a manner that is clear, concise, truthful, and responsible. As a set of principles, ethical communication understand that one's thoughts must be conveyed and expressed effectively and concisely, and that the resulting actions or consequences will potentially be based solely on how the message was communicated. Communications revolution of the last decade has fundamentally changed the ways that modern people interact, share information, and otherwise communicate. Communication is a big part of our lives, and this means that it is powerful. Communication used to improve interpersonal relations or to bring moral changes to society. Interpersonal relation is the systems of exchange between individuals or transferring information from one person to another. Communication is the centerpiece of interpersonal relationships through which people build trust, express emotions, and establish connections. Any form of communication discussed by my other groupmates, it may have positive or negative implications in an individual. But as we continue to communicate, we must follow these ethical standards to promote a healthier habit when interacting. Let's watch this. Announcement. All managers of each department should now go to the meeting room. Again,
Guys,
all
may
managers
meeting daw.
of each
Lahat daw ng
department should
manager
now
now
go
na.
to the meeting room. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning po. Good morning, ma'am.
Okay, so I am Miss Big Ati. Today I'm going to talk about some of the rules and regulations that I changed to improve this company. Since my father is the previous owner, let me in charge. So I'm the new owner starting today. Understood? First is all about your leaves and absences. You may not absent yourself without my permission, particularly on work days, immediately before or after a weekend or a paid holiday. Understand? Also, you may not fail to notify me immediately.
Ma'am, paano po kapag...
In case of absence due to sickness or emergency. Next, you may not take a leave despite failure to secure valid authorization for the
Ma'am,
leave.
paano po siya? May exception po ba sa kanya? Dahil...
Open your mouth and talk once again without my permission, Miss Dima, diba? Makikita mo ang hinahanap mo.
Ma'am, wala naman po akong hinahanap eh.
And by that, you are fired.
Ma'am, joke lang naman po.
Not guilty and get out. Now, by the way, I'm going to be honest with you. Our company's profit is going down and I didn't steal the money in our own company na pinagkakalat at bulong-bulungan ninyo. Here's the copy of all the transaction, expenses, and income natin for the whole year. I'm transparent, okay?
First is honesty. Honesty is the most core principle of ethical communication. This is an essential feature that every communication should have, whether it is among members on the same level, from employees to managers or vice versa, or from management to its external stakeholders. Honesty should always prevail when presenting facts and figures regarding goals, expectations, and other relevant company information. Being wholly transparent also means establishing truthful representation. Kailangan nating maging honest sa ating mga subordinates and workers upang maiwasan mga false rumors and false information na makakasira sa isang tao o relasyon mo sa iyong kapwa. Kagaya ng pagiging transparent ni Miss Big Atin, mas mabibuild yung trust sa kanya ng kanyang mga employee. And when it comes to online communication naman, you need to search more to know if it's accurate or real and ask for legit proof. And most importantly, avoid sharing fake news.
second is about your work performance. You should avoid unsatisfactory work performance for no valid reason in any particular day or assignment. If you rate missed, if you did excel on your work, I would fire you. Because hindi ka worth it sa company na to. We hire only the best skilled worker in this country. And also to innovate and make our business stay on top. What about all the machines in the operating room? Maayos pa ba? Or may complication or damage? Sabi ko naman diba, always inform me every day. Kung may problem ba sa machinery natin, and what about the layout and design? Okay, Miss Pangaliban first.
Ito po ang design and layout ng products po natin. Ito po ang example.
Okay, very good. How about you? Mr. Lee Baguette? Any answer?
Machinery naman po natin, ma'am. Wala naman pong problema. Wala naman po. Maayos pa naman po sila.
Bakit hindi mo naman sinabi ang
Huwag ka na
totoo kay
maingay
ma'am?
dyan. Huwag ka na maingay
Sige
dyan.
lang, papagalitan ka niyan.
Kinakabahan ba naman ako?
Number 2. Refrain from doing harm. The communication, either at corporate to individual level or internal to external parties, should always make every effort to refrain from doing harm. For example, sa layout and design ay nagpapakita ng right ethical communication dahil na ipapakita nito ang warning and kung kanino ito nakakaapekto kapag mali ang paggamit sa produkto. Sa machinery naman, ay example ng unethical communication dahil hindi niya sinasabi kung ano ba talaga ang totoong nangyayari. Maaari itong maging dahilan ng pagkasunog, pagkasira ng mga products at siya ang masisisi sa bandang huli. At si Mr. Lee Baguette ay nagpapakita ng dishonesty na lumalabag sa Code of Ethics. Isa sa mga dapat isalang-alang sa mga ginagawang products at mga kagamitan sa loob ng operating services ay ang kaligtasan ng mga empleyado at ng mga consumer. Dahil sa kanila nakasalalay ang ikabubuti ng company and business na mayroon ka.
Okay, that's all. Any concern? Ma'am, di po sana sa rules niyo po sa work performance, hindi po ba pwedeng babaan niyo ng konti yung standards niyo po? Para po kasi man unfair sa amin. Kapag po di kami nag-excel, tanggal na agad. Eh bakit po sila may laging at Bella, nakamag-anak niyo? Kahit bago pa lamang ay nasa mataas na posisyon na agad. Paano naman po kami? So are you the boss? The owner? Ako ang masusunod dito. If you want to stay, obey, follow, I want. Understand?
Next is fairness to all stakeholders. When communicating internally or externally, the organization should attempt to be fair to its employees, customers, and community. In the video, it shows an ethical communication since hindi na ipakita ang fairness sa kanyang mga employee. Fairness promotes long-term relationships since it deals directly with the equitable treatment of others despite unjust behavior. The definitive factors of fairness include equality, impartiality, honest communication, and justice. Kapag nagkaroon ng fairness through communication, magkakaroon ng maayos na pag-uusap at magkakaroon ng linaw sapagkat wala kang pinapanigang panig at naunawaan mo ang stand ng bawat isa. Let's not promote bias. Marami pang ibang principle of ethics in communication, but I will repeat those 3 common ethics in communication. It is honesty, refrain from doing harm, and fairness to all stakeholders. Now I'm going to discuss the next topic, which is the concept of decision making. What is decision making? Decision-making refers to choosing among alternative courses of actions which may even include procrastination. It is also the process of making choices by identifying a decision, gathering information, and assessing alternative resolutions. While it can be argued that management is decision making, half of the decisions made by managers within organizations fail. Therefore, increasing effectiveness in decision making is an important part of maximizing your effectiveness at work. This chapter will help you understand how to make decisions alone or in a group while avoiding common decisions making traps. Sa isang organisasyon, lahat ng information at data ng individual ay iniipon nila at ginagamit bilang batayan sa pagbuo ng kanilang magiging desisyon para sa ikabubuti ng mga kasapi ng isang organization. Because many decisions involve an ethical component, one of the most important considerations in management is whether the decisions you are making as an employee or manager are ethical. Here are some basic questions you can ask yourself to assess the ethics of a decision. Is this decision fair? Will I feel better or worse about myself after I make this decision? Does this decision break any organizational rules? Does this decision break any laws? How would I feel if this decision was broadcast on the news? Decision making is the key skill in the workplace and very important for the leaders. It is also important every day in our personal life. Some decisions are simple and are almost automatic, while others can be very difficult. But if you make a wrong decisions, it can bring consequences that one is forced to live with for a long time. I hope you understand the topic that I discussed, and here's my other group mates to discuss the topics that assigned to them.
So, hello everyone. I'm James Louis Asuncion and I'm here to explain types of decisions and decision-making models. As we all know, decisions in an organization originate from top management level downward to its employees. However, some people assume that only top managers' decisions matter, but in reality, all the proposed decisions by the member of the organization also matter as long as it is relevant and propose the solutions to their problems. In every organization, the type of decision differ. So in this discussion, we will identify the two types of decisions. So the two types of decisions are program decisions and non-program decisions. So what is program decision? It is a monotonous and repetitive process wherein the individual consider certain SOPs, guidelines, and company policies in formulating decision. A program decisions use in any related structured situations. So structured situations are the problem which is more or less routine and repetitive in nature. So one example of program decision is deciding how many raw materials to order since it is based on anticipated production and existing stock. The second type of decisions is non-program decision. These decisions deals with unstructured situations. Unstructured situations is the opposite of structured situations, which means non-recurring situations. The problems to be solved are unusual, ill-defined, and complex. thus requires extensive brainstorming before finalizing decision. These decisions require a fair degree of risk-taking, since outcomes of decisions are not always certain. They are done by managers in top level of the organization. Some example of non-program decisions include deciding whether to establish another branch of the store, since the company doesn't have an idea if if their store will profit in that local area. And also it includes selling new products, since they don't have past experience on selling that particular product. So to sum it up, the difference between programmed and non-programmed decisions are: first, programmed decisions deals with routine and repetitive problems, while non-programmed decisions deals with non-routine and non-repetitive problems. Second, programmed decisions are made at lower levels of management, while non-programmed decisions were made generally by top level of management. Third, full information is available for making decisions in programmed decisions, while non-programmed decisions has limited information in making new decisions. And lastly, programmed decisions has simple procedure, while non-programmed decisions has complex procedure. Our next topic is all about decision-making models. There are various decision-making models that manager may use as a basis in formulating the solutions to their problems. An organization must carefully select which model best appropriate to the situation they are experiencing, so that they can make effective and efficient course of actions. So there are 5 decision-making models. The first decision-making model is rational decision-making model. This model uses objective, logical, and design information and analysis. In this model, the decision maker must understand the situation, plan, and interpret information, and then take action. There are 6 steps used in rational decision making model. First, define the problem. Second, identify the criteria you will use to judge possible action solutions. Third, decide how important each criterion is. Fourth, generate a list of possible solution alternatives. Fifth, evaluate the alternatives. And sixth, determine the best solutions. In some sources, they identify additional steps, which include testing your solution before fully implementing it. Using this model minimizes risk and uncertainty. However, this is not the best model to use when you only have short period of time. Bounded rationality model. This model assumes that various factors found in an organization limit rational decision making. The same steps in decision making process are used in the bounded rationality model. However, the information and alternatives considered are bounded or limited to the amount the decision maker is willing to collect. This model and also behold satisfying model, since you don't have to seek best possible decisions, but you just need to satisfy or identify the potential decision that can satisfy the the particular problem or the bounded rationality can be used if you don't have enough time or information to follow the full rational decision making model. Linear model of decision making. It involves listing positive and negative effects of each alternative that the decision maker identified. For it to be truly linear decision making, the decision maker must then rate or provide a score to each of the positive and negative factors and arrive at a total sum for each side. Intuitive decision-making model. When a manager refers to a past experiences and personal assessment in making decisions, they use the intuitive decision-making model. This model is often used when encountering problems with high level of uncertainty or complexity, or when the decision is unusual and the managers don't have past experiences with this kind of problems. If managers are faced with uncertain, complex situations and they don't have the right information to make a best decision quickly, they rely on hunches and intuition. Garbage and model. This model is one where managers use information about problems, members, solutions, and opportunities randomly in generating new ideas and possible decisions. As you can see in the figure, there is no sequence of steps, unlike in rational decision making, but rather the decision comes by looking at independent streams of events. Unlike other models, this model does not always lead to satisfactory solutions because the problem does not always precede alternatives and solutions. In summary, there are 5 decision-making models. The rational decision-making models, bounded rationality model, intuitive decision-making model, linear model of decision-making, and garbage and model.
Hello, I'm Joseph. After you learned all of those things from my blogmates, I will now discuss some important terms that you should also remember in making decisions. Let's start with bias in decision making. Isa sa mga nagiging source ng pagkakamali sa paggawa ng desisyon ay ang pagiging bias. Ano nga ba ang ibig sabihin ng salitang bias? Bias is the prejudice of being in favor or against something, usually in an unjust manner. Here, an individual tends to use too much emotion or depend on his current mood when making decisions, at napakamali nito. Kasi pag nagagawa dapat tayo ng desisyon, utak at hindi emosyon ang pinaiiran. Hence, impulsive and prejudged decisions are given to other people that may give poor and unwanted results. Kagaya po ito ng nangyayari sa maraming Pilipino ngayong darating na halalan. Puro emosyon lang pinaiiral at hindi pinag-aaralan ng maayos ang ibobotong kandidato. Ang mga ito po ang mga common forms ng biases that individuals tend to have. Ang una po natin dyan ay overconfidence bias. This is when people think highly of themselves, that they tend to be overly optimistic of being right all the time. Ito daw po ay pag masyado ng malaki ang tiwala mo sa sarili mo at hindi ka na nakikinig sa ibang tao. Akala mo ay ikaw lagi ang tama. Sunod po dito ay ang anchoring bias. This is the tendency deciding based on the initial information only and failing to adjust for succeeding information as it is gathered. Ito po yung unang impormasyon lang na dumating, ito na lang ang gagamitin sa pagdesisyon at hindi napapakailaman ang mga susunod na impormasyon na nakalap. Napakamali po nito. Next is confirmation bias. This is the tendency of selecting and gathering information that only supports one's initial conclusions to reaffirm past choices. Ito yung pinipili mo lang ang mga impormasyon na gagamitin na pwedeng sumuporta sa iyong unang konklusyon at para mapagtibay lang ang mga nakaraan mong desisyon, maling-mali. Ang sunod po ay hindsight bias. This is when an individual believes that he or she has accurately predicted a particular occurrence after the outcome of such events become known. Ito ay kapag ang isang individual ay naniniwala na nahulaan niya ang isang particular na pangyayari pagkatapos malaman ang kinalabasan ng naturang kaganapan. Meron din po tayong tinatawag na representative bias. This kind of bias occurs when an individual wrongly compares two situations due to its similarity or when he or she impulsively evaluates a happening without comparing it to similar situations. Nangyayari daw po ito pag mali ang pagkukumpara sa dalawang sitwasyon dahil sa pagkakapareho nito. Sunod po dito ay availability bias. This form of bias suggests that individuals tend to use readily available information when making a decision rather than conducting proper observation and research. Nangyari daw po ito karamihan kapag ang isang tao ay hindi gumawa ng sariling obserbasyon, siguro dahil po sa katamaran at umaasa lamang po sa mga nakahanda ng impormasyon. Maling-mali po ito. Commitment errors ang sunod. It is when a decision maker insists on being committed to a previous decision in spite of negative information. He/she commits his error. Ito yung alam mo nang mali, ipinipilit mo pa, hindi po ako umuugot. Ito lang po ang ibig sabihin talaga nito. Ang huli po ay ang randomness errors. This kind of error or bias wherein impaired decisions are made because of creating a meaning from random events. Nangyayari po ang kamalian ito pag gumawa tayo ng isang desisyon dahil lang sa isang di karaniwang pangyayari. Sobrang mali. Ngayon pong nalaman na natin ang mga uri ng biases, isa-isahin nga po natin ang mga ito. Una po ay overconfidence bias, anchoring bias, confirmation bias, hindsight bias, representative bias, availability bias, commitment errors at randomness errors. Wala po pala siya. Sana ay matandaan nyo sila. At dahil tapos na tayo sa bias in decision making, let's proceed to our next topic, which is group decision making and techniques. In an organization, individuals may form groups to accomplish given tasks in a more effective way. Importante para sa ating lahat na matutunan kung paano gumagawa ng desisyon ng isang grupo. Importante ding malaman ng mga teknik na kanilang ginagamit sa paggawa ng desisyon. Groups use the same decision-making models that individuals rely on. Just like individuals, groups can use linear models and intuition when on decision-making. Maging sa group decision-making ay maaari din tayong makaranas ng mga biases. But to avoid this possible harmful scenarios, may mga model at techniques. ang pwede nating gamitin to reduce fear and uncertainty and generate better results with their decisions. Una po dito ay ang nominal group technique. It is structured, nandito po yung pictures. It is structured process of generating and ranking ideas proposed by members to solve the identified problem. It is considered nominal because the technique helps reduce interaction among members at some stages in group decision making. Kung makikita nyo po sa model sa ibaba, dito po, merong 4 na hakbang ang the nominal group technique. Step 1 po, individuals in the group are given a problem and the member identifies his or her alternatives to that problem. Step 2 naman po, all of the alternatives given are shared with the group and taken into account. Step 3 po, without disclosing whom the alternatives were from, the group narrows their list through brainstorming and discussions. Step 4 po, the group votes which among the narrowed down list of alternatives are the best. Ang proseso pong ito ay maaring ulit-ulitin hanggang magkasundo sa naisip na solusyon sa isang problema. The key to succeed in this technique is the limited interaction among members during the first stage, which also require a facilitator. Ang pangalawang technique po ay the Delphi technique. Delphi, hindi ko po alam kung paano ibigkas. This technique suggests the use of a series of formal surveys and rating scales to obtain various opinions about an issue. A facilitator or a small group may form a questionnaire to ask for the opinions of others on a particular problem or topic, and then gather and summarize the responses to develop a more focused questionnaire. This can be repeated several times until they have identified the primary cause of the issue. Kagaya rin po ito ng nominal na pwedeng ulit-ulitin. This technique can be done in a larger groups and be conducted through the use of technology. However, it is time-consuming and requires other techniques before concluding into a final decision. To further understand what the Delphi technique is, I will show you a video.
Nominal means in name only. Let's take a look at the nominal group technique. Accordingly, the nominal group technique, known as the NGT, received its name because it begins with a quiet time in which group members independently write down as many problem definitions and alternative solutions as possible. In other words, the NGT begins by having group members act as individuals. After the quiet time, the group leader asks each member to share one idea at a time with the group. As they're read aloud, ideas are posted on flip charts or whiteboards for all to see. This step continues until all ideas have been shared. In the next step, the group discusses the advantages and disadvantages of the ideas. The NGT closes with a second quiet time in which group members independently rank the ideas presented. Group members then read their rankings aloud, and the idea with the highest average rank is selected. The nominal group technique improves group decision-making by decreasing A-type conflict, but it also restricts C-type conflict. Nonetheless, more than 80 studies have found the nominal group technique to produce better ideas than those produced by traditional groups.
Hi everyone, it's Yanis here, and in this video we will explore what is Delphi method. It's often hard to know what will happen in the future, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to predict it. If this is your first time on this channel, then make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon to get updates on my latest videos about time management and productivity. Delphi method is a forecasting process framework based on the results of multiple rounds of questionnaires sent to the panel of experts. The Delphi technique is a method used to estimate the likelihood and outcome of future events. So let's take a look at what are the steps that need to be taken in order to get the best future predictions. Step 1. Choose a facilitator. You may wish to take on this role yourself or find a neutral person within your business. Step 2. Identify your experts. The Delphi technique relies on panel of experts. An expert is any individual with the relevant knowledge and experience on a particular topic. These might be people in your development team, your customers, or your friends with sufficient knowledge and understanding. Step 3. Define the problem. Here you have to clearly define the problem that you're trying to solve as it plays.
Salamat sa panonood. Nawa kayo'y nasiyahan at may natutunan. Hanggang sa muli. Paalam!